This is the best update ever. Oh yeah, and I guess these guys are cool too. After playing my fair share of Silksong, I welcome you to 1.21.9. Scratch that, reverse it, 1.21.10. What is with this version numbering convention? Look, at this point, if 1.22 isn't either the end update or the green gem update I joked about over a year ago at this point, I'm going to riot. Anyway, welcome to the Copper Age. To get it out of the way, shelves. They're cool, I guess. I don't really have much to say about them. And new copper blocks are always welcome. My main issue with them, and some of the older copper related blocks, particularly the ones that aren't full blocks, is the inability to craft oxidized versions of them. So, I have made it that when you scrape a copper block, you have a chance to collect its oxidization, called patina? You can then use this to force an unwaxed block to oxidize, so you don't have to wait for your copper lantern to turn blue. Wait, copper lantern, copper torch, green flame? Where is my green fire, Mojane? We wants it, we needs it, and they stole it from us. So until then, I guess I will need to provide for myself. Once you have set your copper blocks to the oxidization of your liking, can you tell me which of these blocks are still needing to be waxed? What about now? That's right, holding a honeycomb will now reveal which blocks are still susceptible to further oxidization. And for my fellow rail enjoyers, due to the tiny amount of copper in them and for their usefulness, you can now pre-wax your copper rails at a better ratio within the crafting table. Before I talk about the star of the update, I want to discuss copper becoming a new tier of weapons and armor. I would like to ask, why would someone bother making a set of copper tools if iron is just around the corner anyway? I had a few ideas of what I could do, but eventually settled on this idea I came across, where if gold is fast but less durable, then copper could be its inverse, having similar stats to stone, but having increased durability. To tie in with durability being its specialty, and to take advantage of a completely missed opportunity, copper gear will now visually oxidize the lower its durability gets. This isn't an oxidization you can set with wax or scrape off, but by repairing the gear either with mending or an anvil, your gear will revert back to its original bright orange self. Rather than just adding copper to the initial pool of armor along with leather and gold that a hostile mob can spawn with, I've decided to give the copper gear to the drowned, so now they can spawn with armor too, including copper weapons and tools like I've given to normal zombies. And because of that, I have also removed gold gear from normal zombies and gave them to the zombies' other counterpart, the husk, especially as that is where lapis is more common to synergize with gold's special enchantment capabilities. So, the copper golem. What do I think of him? I like him, but that doesn't mean that there are some small improvements that could be made. To let the storage expert speak, I have basically added the suggestions that Cubic Meter had for the golem. Namely speaking, the golem will now remember the last item and chest it interacted with. So even if the items in the copper chest are randomized, it will attempt to take the same item as last time, and if it succeeds, it will first try the chest that it managed to deposit that item, rather than starting the search from scratch for every item. Speeding up its sorting without letting it carry a whole stack will make it move quicker. It's working smarter, not harder. His other idea, which I've slightly modified, is about shulkers and other containers. If they have contents inside, the golem would instead check against the first item in it, so a shulker with dirt in its first slot will go into the chest that has dirt in it already. However, unlike the golem's normal item check, this one is item component specific. So if you put, say, a piece of paper named redstone in its first slot, it won't accept any old paper, but only another piece of paper with the same name, allowing for more specific sorting. With the addition of the new copper lantern, a discussion on Discord had the idea to complete the set and add a redstone lantern, acting similar to a redstone torch, however when attached to the ceiling, powering it from above will turn it off. and since it is a solid lantern rather than redstone on a stick, it even works underwater. And regarding the golem, if Mojang is allowed to add in previously scrapped ideas, I can too. So say hello to the complete and oh so green azalea woodset. Have fun building! Now, this wouldn't be a fixed Minecraft video unless I talked about how I continue to modify the enchanting system, wouldn't it? But I promise you it's all positive changes. One of the biggest issues I have with the experimental changes, where different enchanted books are sold from librarians from different biomes, is how do you know what book comes from where without needing to search it up? And that is why I have made it so that when you come across enchanted books as loot, it will now hint at which biome a librarian will sell more of them using the same icons you will find on the Village Explorer maps. For example, mending books now tell you to go to the swamp via the swamp hut icon. Fishing related enchants show a fish since the fisherman now sells them, soul speed a gold ingot to refer to piglin bartering, and swift sneak and echo shard to point towards ancient cities. I have also made it so that when you are repairing an item in an anvil, the level cost is halved. So an item with 30 levels of enchants on it will only need 15 to repair, as I feel repairing the item should be easier than modifying its enchants, and to better balance it against mending. Additionally, disenchanting an item via the grindstone will produce more XP than before, at 1/5 the total XP. So disenchanting 5 level 30 items will take you to level 30. This means it will usually take disenchanting 1 to 2 items to get the XP required to repair another item of the same amount of enchants on it. And when you enchant an item using the table, you will get on average 75% of the XP back from the grindstoning it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it is easier to reroll enchants, as the grindstone still removes some durability. However, it does mean finding loot with enchants on it could be worth more to you even if you don't need to use it, as it is effectively stored XP. Because of this, I've also simplified the chance of anvil damaging to 10%. The netherite is still 0 if the action could be done in the normal anvil, then it is 10% if the item is over capacity, and a further 5% for each super enchant. After watching Nice's recent video about maps, I have added one of the changes in his new mod, where grass no longer shows up on maps to avoid clutter, and flowers use their respective dye colours, as well as rails also showing up in iron grey. Nice talked about how despite there being 4 shades per base colour, only 3 are available in survival, so I introduced a way to use it by placing tinted glass above the block. Talking about tints, a common suggestion I have heard is to tint the map based on what biome it is covering. Short of a full recoding of the map colour system, which Nice says it needs anyway, I have mainly targeted the worst offenders by changing the grass colour in savannas and both the grass and leaves of the swamp to better match their respective biomes. Someone in my YouTube comments had the idea of having a pillager patrol captain have a chance to drop a map to a nearby pillager outpost, and as I liked the idea, I added it. They also suggested the chest at the top leading to structures like swamp huts or desert and jungle temples, but I instead thought it better to have maps to where they came from and where they are going, a map to a mansion, and a map to a village that they plan on raiding. From there, I also added a monument map to buried treasure chests and a trial chamber map to dungeons as alternative ways to obtain these maps as opposed to exclusively relying on the cartographer. I have also had a few people express interest in using the treasure map icons for their own purposes. So now you can customize the banner icon by using square brackets at the start of its name. And after the bottom dweller's rant in his recent Minecraft video, it got me to add a map to a ruined portal and have that sold by cartographers, especially since I have made them rarer to reduce how many of these eyesores you see. With all that I have done to make maps better, some have made the valid point that this leaves lodestone compasses even more obsolete. One of the biggest issues I have with compasses stems with a similar issue I have with maps, where if you have multiple in your inventory, it is difficult to tell the difference between them. So to help with this, I have added the ability to dye these compasses to help differentiate them and let you color code them. And as lodestone compasses are just an item component of normal compasses, that means you can dye your normal compass if you so please. Another issue I have is the lack of examples for lodestone compasses. Sure, for the longest time the lodestone required an entire netherite ingot, which I agree was way too expensive, but now that they only cost an iron ingot, I feel like I am able to place one, for example, in an ancient city, and add a blue compass that points towards it. I also wanted to do the same for trial chambers to imply that maps are for surface structures and compasses for underground ones, which I think there should be more of. However, where the ancient city generation is extremely reliable, the trial chambers not so much, so trying to make a compass point to it was difficult to get to work. I know that even with these two new benefits, the map, and especially the map book, will always be better options, but it's something at least. After making compasses dyeable, it reminded me of how much I disliked how dull all the dyed leather clothing was, and that the only way to get the vibrant colours I desired was to use commands, so that is yet another thing I have fixed. And on top of that, if you're using the inbuilt Green Tweaks resource pack, it also removes the brown padding to make them look even better. As I then added compasses to the list of dyed items a water cauldron can remove, I did the same for bundles, stained glass and terracotta. And dyed wool, carpets, beds and harnesses will become white when washed. As I wanted this process to be automatable, I added this functionality to dispensers when facing a water cauldron. But in order to do that, I went ahead and added the long time coming full dispenser cauldron functionality, including both water bottles and buckets, lava and powder snow. You're welcome, fellow redstoners. I then added the ability for both the player and dispensers to be able to rehydrate dead coral using a water bottle. It will die again if not placed in water, but from there I added the ability to craft coral blocks to make them actually renewable outside of the tiny amounts that you can buy from the wandering trader. So, this blue compass I mentioned before, where did I end up placing it? Well, what better time than now to attempt to fix the mechanic I have made the most fun of for being overly useless: Archaeology. Trail ruins have two main loot tables, common and rare, which refers to utter trash and the mildly interesting stuff you might actually do archaeology for. So let's start by bundling all the common items together into an actual bundle and move all the rare stuff over to common. In their place, I have put some ingots and enchanted books to help with progression, shovels to help your excavation, a small chance for a diamond or emerald block as shown from the original showcase over 5 years ago, and some other unique items like goat horns, wolf armor, turtle helmets, skeleton skulls, and finally, the new blue ancient city compass. I also removed most of the junk from ocean ruin suspicious blocks to not waste your time as much, and to help you find the difficult to spot trail ruins, you can now find a map to them at the Desert Well and Jungle Temple. After making archaeology feel like it has a use, I finally decided to take a jab at my other pet grievance, the Sniffer. Starting with its special plants, I obviously made the torch flower live up to its name by functioning like a torch, but decided to take it one step further by torching up any mobs that come into contact with it. From there, I figured the pitcher pod could be like the Venus flytrap, taking a large bite out of any mob that gets too close before going into cooldown to digest. Think the Chomper from Plants vs Zombies. Oh, and the Sniffer is immune to them both. Next, instead of only having 2 items it can dig up, why not have a 1 in 3 chance for the torch flower seeds, a 1 in 3 chance of pitcher pods, and a 1 in 3 chance to dig up almost any other plant related item, including saplings, seeds, flowers, corals, and more from anywhere in the world. A somewhat common change I see people disliking in the comments of my first video has to do with how I nerfed the elytra either because they hate that it no longer works in the rain, or because they don't like the need for Dragon's Breath to fly infinitely. And while I do have my reasons for both, here is my compromise. I've made it so that the elytra will only stop working in the rain if the difficulty is at least normal. And normal fireworks are no longer completely useless, as they provide a small vertical boost with a 5-second cooldown. Enough to keep you afloat, but lacks the speed and agility that the dragon fireworks can provide. I have given you an inch, don't take a mile. One of the biggest issues I have with peaceful mode is the lack of ability to reach the end unless you either have 1 in a trillion luck or choose a seed with a pre-filled end portal. Since ender pearls can be obtained through piglin bartering, I have added 4 blaze powder to the brewing stands in the basement of igloos. Not enough to realistically help a normal survival playthrough, but enough that if you find 3 igloos, you can complete your own end portal. And since in Peaceful food is largely useless due to how your hunger regenerates on its own, for role players, I have made food always edible when playing in Peaceful. As I wandered the surface, it got me back to looking at snow biomes and the clear lack of snow in areas that really should have it. So snow now generates under leaves as well as on top of them. So now you truly can dream of your white Christmas. While programming this, at one point I accidentally let it generate all the way through the world, not just on the surface. But after fixing this bug, I then made it a proper feature. It's not realistic. Shut. This is Minecraft. I think it looks pretty cool. And I know you do too. While working on snow, I added a parity feature by letting snow be affected by gravity when the supporting block is removed. And when snow falls onto more snow, it stacks on top of each other. I also wanted to add a way to stop snow and ice from melting, so now if ice is touching or snow on top of a crying obsidian block, the tears of the crying obsidian will prevent it from melting. This also works in the nether, so there is now a way to have nether iceboat highways again, even if the game rule allowing ice to melt in the nether is enabled. But it will be more expensive than the overworld highways due to the high amount of crying obsidian you will also need. Some small additions that came from the community include the ability to stop wolves from attacking their target by shifting when using a goat horn, the clock moon phase and buff HUD display to be greyed out during the day to make it obvious that the effect is not active at the time, to be able to feed frogs spider eyes to breed them and silk touch their frog spawn, removing the knockback reduction from blast protection to fully utilize it as a form of transport, the ability to turn rotten flesh into the leather by cooking it, for baby zombies to have only half the health of their adult counterparts, and for allays to spawn rarely inside dark oak forests to make them not completely reliant on structures and make the dark oak forest feel a little more magical. And after some of my own playtesting, I have increased the healing speed and the enchantment capacity of all items. One addition that I added because of the Minecraft movie, funnily enough, was to make it so that by throwing an awkward splash potion at a piglin or hoglin, they will no longer zombify when entering the overworld. From there, I have also made it so that the leather worker can now sell enchanted and trimmed leather gear. The bundle will now automatically insert items on pickup if it already contains an item of the same type. Chainmail armor now gives a passive +1 impact protection enchant, as chainmail IRL is a good defense against swords, but not so much against the likes of arrows. All raw foods have a small chance to give you the hunger effect. Phantoms circle at a lower height to give you a better chance to shoot them. You can no longer use a shield, attack or mine upon reaching 0 stamina, and I have fixed the villager armor renderer so it doesn't rely on invisible armor stands anymore. Additionally, with the help of OpenGX11, floating islands are now back as a world type to choose from, and this time they now generate complete with all possible biomes and structures, so a proper survival world in them is possible for those of you who want an interesting challenge. And finally, the game will now remember the last couple of beds the player has slept in. So you can now have a bed at home, then safely sleep while out on an adventure, break the bed, and when you die, you can die knowing that you will respawn not back at the world spawn, but at your home. Thanks to the help of my awesome community, this mod now has translation files for German, French, Italian, Brazilian, Polish, Ukrainian, Russian, Hebrew, Norwegian, and Czech. So, as always, let me tell you to go have fun. And I guess I'll see you again in another few months to tell you my thoughts on the upcoming Spear, or as it really should be called, the Lance. See ya!